Racist cop ends black twin sisters picnic, but then he regretted it bitterly. It was a Saturday that promised to be unforgettable. The sun danced among the leaves of the trees in the Central Park, and the laughter of two twin girls echoed among the families who spread colorful towels on the grass. Ayla and Luma, 10 years old, shared strawberries with their grandmother, played Uno with time-worn cards, and took selfies with handmade wreaths. One of those simple days, but so rare. Do you remember the last time the world seemed to stop to see you smile? Well, for them, that moment was this: peace, childhood, freedom. But why do days like this seem to bother so much when they happen in the wrong body? It was at the height of the dubbing game, when Ayla and Luma were recording a video imitating Beyoncé that a shadow approached. It was not from a tree nor from a cloud. It was a presence, cold, authoritarian, unnecessary. The policeman positioned himself as if watching a threat. But what was there, if not children? An elderly lady and a basket of snacks. This is no place for you. It wasn't a question. It was a sentence, cold, cruel, blunt. The grandmother stood up slowly, her knees fragile, her dignity intact. He tried to understand. He explained that they were just having fun, that they had the right to be there like any other family. But he didn't want to hear it. Have you ever felt like your existence was a nuisance to someone who doesn't even know? You? The policeman pressed his holster, unlocked the pepper spray, white eyes, stiff jaw, impatient breathing. The girls stopped smiling. Luma hid her cell phone in her pocket. Ayla grabbed her grandmother's arm, and the world, which was once filled with laughter, was now silence and fear. The people around watched. Some recorded. Others lowered their eyes. No one intervened, because unfortunately many have become accustomed to seeing authority confused with threat. But there was someone watching, someone who wasn't just going to watch. And that's when everything starts to change, because what no one knew was that this moment, this exact moment, it was about to be recorded in a way that the whole world would see. And what would come next? No one was prepared to face it. The best and the most painful was yet to come. Sometimes justice starts with a simple gesture, a trembling finger on the record button. As the policeman yelled at Ayla and Luma's grandmother, as the girls shrunk their bodies as if they could disappear, someone on the other side of the square stopped. A woman, alone with a dog on a leash and a cell phone in her hand. Her instinct was not to confront, but he was not to turn his face either. She just pressed rec. Have you ever thought about how many stories died in the silence of those who watched in silence? How many screams were lost because they were not filmed? But this time, someone registered it. The video begins with laughter in the background, children playing, a lady opening a thermos, and then, like dry thunder in a blue sky, the policeman's voice bursts out, "Come on, get out, this is no place for you." The camera shakes. You can see Ayla's small body cowering behind her sister. You can hear the sound of the pepper spray lock being triggered, and for 2 seconds, his face appears, clear, tense, furious. And that's what changed everything, because that video, less than a minute long, broke the bubble of the square. Someone shared it in the neighborhood, then in the school group, then on a complaints page, and before the night came, he was everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, local newspapers, mothers' groups, forums of lawyers. But there was still a question, hanging in the air. Who was that policeman? The uniform was without visible identification, the license plate of the vehicle blurred by the sun. He acted as if he knew that no one would know his name, but the world now wanted to know. Indignation grew like a dry fire in a high bush, and the comments multiplied. This cannot go unpunished. Who are these girls? Someone needs to do something, but no one imagined that someone was already doing it. Someone with much more power than anyone thought. Someone who would not accept that his daughters were treated as a threat. And when the world finds out who Ayla and Luma are, everything, absolutely everything, so it will change. And we're still not even close to what's to come. The city was still digesting the video. The networks were boiling, the comments did not stop. Some demanded justice, others tried to justify it. But Ayla and Luma just wanted to go to school. The wound wasn't physical yet, but it already hurt. The grandmother held the girls' hands tightly, trying to give them back the only thing they had lost without realizing. The right to walk in peace, but what no one knew, it was that the police officer had also seen the video, and he was completely beside oneself. That morning, while the sky was still clearing of dew and cars began to jam the streets of the center, a car slowly appeared, as one who hunts. Ayla, Luma, and her grandmother followed in the middle distance. With each step, the sound of the tires seemed louder, more threatening, closer. Have you ever felt when danger doesn't scream? Does he whisper? Have you noticed that sometimes silence is the biggest alert? When they turned the corner from the school, he got off, gun in hand, eyes in fury. Stopped. The three of them now. The grandmother stepped forward. He tried once again to dialogue. He didn't listen. He was upset. He spoke as if he were being unjustly accused, as if the victims were him. You made it all up. This will end now. The children froze. Luma tried to hide Ayla behind the backpack. People began to appear at the windows. A man ran to film. But within seconds, everything turned into chaos. The moment the grandmother raised her arm, perhaps to protect, perhaps reflexively, the policeman lost his balance. His finger squeezed the trigger. The sound was dry, final, unmistakable. The bullet caught Ayla in the leg, and there, on the cold floor of the sidewalk, with blood mixing with the school uniform, what was a denunciation video became a national headline. The crowd screamed. Someone held the policeman, others called the ambulance, but the grandmother just held Ayla, repeating her name like a desperate prayer. But the world still didn't know who that girl was, and when they found out the surname he carried, justice would cease to be a request, and would become a promise. What would come next? It would change the country, and there was no way to stop. The sirens cut through the city like sharp blades. Ayla was conscious but pale. His leg was bleeding and his breathing was short. The ambulance followed at high speed, while the grandmother trembled in the front seat, trying to answer questions that they had not felt at that moment. And Luma just held her cell phone to her chest. She didn't say anything. He only repeated inside, Ayla will be fine. She'll be fine. But the city, she was no longer the same. The video of the shooting was leaked even before the blood dried. No, amateur journalist published it with a caption that spread like wildfire. He shot a child, and she was just going to school. The networks exploded. Civil rights groups lobbied in. Reporters arrived at the hospital. But it was when a name appeared in the comments that everything changed. A discreet comment. A simple but devastating observation. Are these girls the daughters of Judge Carla Monroe? Have you ever heard of Carla Monroe? She is not just any judge. She is the youngest black woman to hold a seat on the state Supreme Court. Known for her firm stance, her history of overcoming, and especially for his public war against police brutality, she was in the middle of a press conference on institutional violence when her aide approached with his cell phone in hand. Her expression changed. The eyes, which had always been calm, turned into storm. The press conference was interrupted at the event. Minutes later, cameras captured Judge Carla Monroe entering the city's central police station. He did not ask for permission. He did not announce a visit. He passed by officers, entered the delegate's office, and said only one sentence: "You have just awakened a giant who slept silently." And in that sentence, there was no screaming. There was a sentence because her silence until that moment was a strategy. But now it was personal. The city, the country, realized that the case had changed scale. Ayla was no longer a statistic. She was the daughter of those who take justice into their own hands. And when justice becomes a mother, the impossible begins to bend. What would come next? Not even Carla Monroe could predict, but one thing was certain. From then on, no one would sleep peacefully. Some cases die in silence, Other awakened the whole country. In the first 24 hours after the shooting, the name Ayla Monroe was the most searched on digital platforms. The videos piled up: the interrupted picnic, the violent approach, the shot, the judge's entry into the police station. But it was an image, a single image, that became a symbol. Ayla in her hospital bed, still, in her school uniform stained with blood, holding her sister's hand. Luma standing next to the bed, eyes fixed on the camera, expression hard, as if promising justice without needing words. The caption of the photo? "Being a child is not a crime." And then, the country exploded. Have you ever seen a hashtag become a movement? Have you ever witnessed the pain of a child turn into a collective scream? The networks were flooded with the hashtags Justiça por Ayla, Elas são todas nós filhas da Caragam. Artists, influencers, teachers, jurists, mothers, everyone posting, all joining voices. One pop singer canceled her tour and said she would not sing as long as black girls are treated as a threat. An award-winning actress visited the hospital. A former justice minister posted, "Carla Monroe is not alone, and much less Ayla and Luma." Meanwhile, the city burned in peaceful protests. Schools made symbolic acts. Black children marched with signs saying, "We want to grow, don't run." And the local police? Silence. No official note, no immediate withdrawal. And that's when Carla acted. He called a press conference in front of the state courthouse. With a firm voice and a look of steel, he announced that the case would no longer be investigated by the municipal body. He demanded federal intervention, an audit of the police corps, and with a trembling voice at the end, asked a question live. How many other Aylas have bled without anyone seeing? The silence after that question echoed like a sentence. Because the answer everyone already knew. But the judge would not stop there. She knew that if she wanted to change the system, she would have to dig deep, and she was willing to go all the way. Because now, the country was listening, and the girls were no longer alone. But what would come next? It involved secrets that no one imagined exposing, and a safety net dirtier than anyone dared to admit. Behind every tragedy exposed, there is always a silence that screams louder. As the protests took to the streets and the country watched with glazed eyes, something strange began to happen inside the police station. The records of the approach to the park disappeared. The official bulletin said that there was no conflict. The body cameras? They were supposedly defective. And the name of the policeman? Still absent from the public bank. How was this possible after so much exposure? It was then that an almost invisible name decided to act. Daniel Rice, assistant prosecutor, young, black, newly sworn in, son of a teacher and grandson of a worker. He had no high office, but he had a memory. I knew that kind of case. Used to be buried inside. If no one is going to dig, I will. He said quietly to himself, "Have you ever felt that something was wrong, even when everyone pretends not to?" Daniel began to pull the old files. 1, 2, 5 complaints against the same police officer. All archived, all with the same pattern. Young black people, violent approaches, threats. None of them reached the public prosecutor's office. None was formally investigated. But there was something worse. A name that was repeated in the internal notes. Sergeant Villela, union leader of the police in the region. A man who bragged in meetings about protecting his own at any cost. He was the one who collected the gun used against Ayla. He was the one who prevented the police officer from being arrested in the act. And then, the documents began to disappear. Reporting. Protocols. An internal video of the parking lot. Everything disappearing in less than 48 hours. It was as if someone inside knew exactly where to erase the tracks. Daniel couldn't trust anyone at the police station, not even in some colleagues on the forum, but there was a way out. With evidence in hand, he directly sought Carla Monroe, and that night, in a small dark room in a judicial building, He showed her everything. The prints, the doctored reports, the muffled accusations. The judge did not say a word. He just closed his eyes. He took a deep breath and then he said, "The network is bigger than I thought. But now, we have the thread." It was the beginning of something much bigger. Because when the truth begins to be unearthed, either it is silenced or it explodes. And in that case, it was about to implode the entire system. But the world would only find out on the day of judgment. When a small voice, but powerful, it would change everything. The courtroom has never been so crowded. It was not a trial. It was a mirror, and everyone wanted to see if they still had the courage to look. Benches occupied by journalists, upper balcony taken by law students, activists, artists, black families with children in their arms. There were tears even before the referee sat down. There were cameras everywhere, but there were also a silence. That heavy silence that precedes earthquakes. In the center, a wooden chair, the witness stand. And there, a girl, with braids, school uniform, and a look that had already seen. More than it should, Luma Monroe. 10 years. Have you ever heard the sound of truth coming out of a child's mouth? Not screaming, not crying, only saying. The judge announced it with a protocol voice. The prosecution was silent. The audience even stopped breathing. Luma folded her hands over her knees, looked at the microphone in front of her, and spoke. He told of the park, pepper spray, of words spoken with hatred, of the grandmother trying to protect. He told of the way to school, from the car, from the gun, from the moment Ayla fell. She told how her sister held her leg and said, "It's okay," while bleeding. Told, no tears, but with the kind of pain that silences even those who doubt. He said we shouldn't be there, but we just wanted to play. The judge in the case substitute, because Carla Monroe obviously walked away from the trial, asked for a break. He couldn't contain his emotion. A journalist dropped his pen. A defense attorney lowered his head. The jury, he was in tears. The defense's attempt was predictable. They claimed that the police officer was under stress, that the shooting was accidental, that he did not recognize the girls. But there were videos, reporting, and there was Luma. Nothing. Dismantles the lie like the look of those who lived the truth. And then at the end of the testimony, something happened. Luma stood up. He looked at the policeman sitting in front, and he said only this, "You saw me, you knew." The room was muted. There was nothing more to say. Because at that moment, the girl that everyone wanted to shut up made the world listen. But the definitive answer was yet to come, and it would come as a sentence and as a promise. The day of the verdict, it would also be the birth of a new future. On the morning of the verdict, the country stopped. It wasn't just a trial, it was a milestone. Schools, teachers projected the court live. On their cell phones, millions followed the judge's every move. On the streets, posters multiplied with the image of the twins and the phrase, "They just wanted to play." The tension was almost palpable. The policeman entered escorted, head down, expression closed. There was no longer the shield of the uniform. The prosecution came in with evidence, videos, documents. But it was the collective memory, which weighed more than any portfolio. The judge read the sentence slowly. Every word was like a hammer and stone. Guilty, attempted murder, abuse of power, conduct incompatible with public function, maximum penalty. Without the right to bail, the country breathed, cried, vibrated. But Carla Monroe, he just closed his eyes, in silence, because for her, the most important thing was yet to come. That same afternoon, she called a new press conference. But this time, it wasn't in a court. It was in the courtyard of a public school on the outskirts. With Ayla on one side, still with her leg in a cast, and Luma on the other, Carla announced the release of something that would turn all that into a purpose, the Girls of Honor Project. a national initiative to welcome, protect, and empower Black girls who are victims of institutional violence. Psychological support, civil rights workshops, scholarships, lectures, and one thing more: voice. Because Carla knew that the greatest weapon against the system that tried to silence his daughters was to teach them, and so many others, to speak louder, taking up space, not asking permission to exist. Ayla and Luma became ambassadors for the project. They visited schools, they spoke to packed auditoriums, and they always said the same phrase at the end of each meeting: being a cis child is not a crime, and it never was. Do you remember that Saturday in the park? That simple picnic? It was just an ordinary day, until someone tries to erase him from history. But history has endured, and because it resisted, now it inspires. And perhaps the most beautiful of all, that seed of pain has turned into a forest of hope, because no one else will look at a Black girl the same way after them. This story ends here. But their legacy, it's just getting started. How many times is Black childhood treated as a threat before it is even heard? How many more will Ayla and Luma be interrupted before they can just exist? This story is not about a police officer, nor just about a court. It's about what happens when the system tries to turn off the light of those who were born to shine. It's about how silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a shield, and how a single voice, even if trembling, even if small, can echo louder than all the cries of oppression combined. Ayla and Luma remind us that justice is not just a sentence. It's what we do with pain after it crosses us. It is transforming trauma into public policy. It is transforming fear in the future. If this story has touched you, then you have a mission. Don't let Ayla and Luma be just an affair. Make them a move. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to watch. Talk about it. Use the hashtag #MeninosDeHonra, because what started with an approach, it can end with a revolution. And remember, who is silent in the face of injustice? Sign underneath it. Now it's up to you. Make noise for those who have never been heard.